we dig deeper into the 30 boxes and into the 530 grid and the DNA for business, any thoughts you have before we do the deep dive, other than it's going to be overwhelming and exhilarating and exciting all at the same time?
Well, I can't really speak to it from other industries, but it's been, every time I've talked about the 530 grid, primarily the 5 part of the 530 grid, especially in the industry that I work in, it's really eye-opening to a lot of brokers to understand if I go through and explain what each of the 5 areas are responsible for, and then go back and say in our industry, who does marketing, who does pre-sales, sales, servicing, and client for life, it's always the real estate agent, where in fact you just hired them to sell, not to do all the other stuff that's there. And it's interesting to watch the eyes kind of light up and the light bulbs pop off in their head when they understand it. And to me, one of the most important parts of this whole process is pre-sale. That to me is, I think most businesses, at least in the real estate business, I know we step over more business than we actually do because we don't have the pre-sale process in place.
And Tom, how would you define pre-sales?
Pre-sale is an incubation process where marketing, the leads that come in from marketing saying, here's our product or services, classify them as an A, B, C, or D. A's immediately go to the sales team to go out and put a deal together. And then they take B's, C's, and D's and incubate those until they become A's, and then push them off to the sales team.
So, Paul, you ready for a goosebump moment?
I was born ready, Mark.
So in pre-sales, we learned about the DNA for people. In pre-sales, the people who naturally do well in pre-sales are going to be the cubes and the balls, the analytic and the amiable. Why? Because in pre-sales, you're getting them all the information they need to make a decision, a sales decision. So they have to have information in pre-sales, and or that's the analytic, the cube, and or they want to have the warm, fuzzy feeling, which is the ball, which is the amiable. So the analytic and amiables will naturally do good in pre-sales. The analytic and the amiable will struggle in the sales because they have the amiable has a hard time asking for the sale because they don't want to seem pushy. They don't want to seem aggressive. They don't like pushy people, so they're not going to push. And the analytic never thinks they have enough information to make a buying decision. So the analytic does really good in pre-sales because they give a lot of information. Now, the downside of having these separated, and I don't know, Tom, if you and I have even talked about this, the downside of having these separated is that if you have the analytic and the amiable in pre-sales, they'll often give details, give far too much details, and or they'll over-nurture them, they'll baby them to death, and they'll never close them. Have we ever talked about that, Tom?
No.
So that's the danger. That's the danger in pre-sales, is they won't ever get out of the pre-sale because the analytic always likes to share more information. The amiable always likes more information. And so if you don't have mechanisms in place that's prying them out of pre-sales, they'll stay in pre-sales forever.
So what can you give me that again? Who is the best for pre-sales?
Well, the ones that's naturally good at pre-sales are the cube, the analytic, and the ball, the amiable. Because the analytic really knows their product line well, and the ball's really good at developing relationships. So if you have an analytic amiable or an amiable analytic, they are built for pre-sales. They're magical. The challenge is they'll often spend way too much time with the person and won't push them into the sale fast enough.
Right.
Now in sales, the ones that tend to do good in area 3 are the wavy line and the pyramid. Now, if you're an analytic or an amiable, do not mishear me saying you can't be good in sales. Some of the best people I've ever known in my life in sales are analytic and amiable. So I'm not saying that. I'm talking system-wise and understanding systems and building systems. And so in your pre-sales, Tom, when you're architecting and engineering that area, you've got to go ahead and have mechanisms in place that make sure that the analytic isn't overselling them, talking themselves out of a deal, and the amiable isn't overloving them, over-connecting with them, and spending too much time where now they become best buddies, but you never close them. The driver personality and the expressive tend to do best in the sale because they don't have a problem with rejection. Like the driver just eats it for breakfast. Like it's like, oh, a challenge, great. So the pyramid, the driver personality, and they're not afraid to close. The expressive, they look at somebody saying no as a challenge. They look at no's as yes. So they're fine with it. So those two personalities will tend to do the best in the sale. And so if you don't architect this perfectly, having them split apart can actually hurt your business and hurt your profitability if you're not careful, which is why you've got to have experts that really understand the deep science of this stuff. Like some of this is not brain surgery. This is what Paul was talking about. Like the 5 areas is not hard. Like that's easy. Don't make that hard. That's easy. But when we get into the 6 levels of proficiency, when we get into the 6 levels of proficiency, when we get into the intricacies of the boxes, that is brain surgery. That is rocket science. You better have somebody that really knows what they're doing, because if you don't have somebody that really knows what they're doing, that's going to potentially, you're going to build a system that's not going to work, or it's not going to be as profitable as what it can be. Any questions on that or thoughts?
I have a thought.
Yep.
So as I'm staring at the grid, it's kind of interesting because I think one of the benefits that I had is going through leverage and being part of the Squared community, EC, because to me, this is like, dimensional thinking, dimensional leaping, kind of coupled with internalization. So you're absolutely right. If, somebody without the ability to have internalized this, then you bounce around and it looks chaotic, but it's not. It really is almost straight line dimensional leaping. So this was my aha moment right now. It's first time I looked at it, I was like everybody else. Oh, what do you mean? 1 to, row 5 to row 3? It doesn't make any sense. Now, complete clarity.
Tom, do you have any idea how, when you saw it, you went ahead and immediately, like you internalized the 530 grid, Tom, instantly, like it hit your brain and you instantly knew? Any ideas how you did that?
Well, it just made logical sense. I mean, marketing tells your story. Pre-sale works the lead that comes through. Sales makes the sale. Servicing closes the sale. And then if you've got, client for life, or if you have a resale, multi-product resale, then that's what happens in Area 5. It's pretty straightforward. And then when you look at the 60 or the boxes, the 30 boxes out there, it was interesting because once I could put the numbers on it, then it really became crystal clear. So now I can just look at the number in the right-hand bottom corner and know, okay, I've got to identify the targets, and then I've got to develop a message for them, and then I've got to track all the leads, and I've got to ask key questions, and so it walks you through here's the path, here's the map, here's how you do it.
Nice. All right, so we've got a lot more to cover here, so we're going to keep flowing. And Nicole and Tom and Paul, feel free to go ahead and interrupt any time. So again, the 530
Well,
grid.
now that you're putting the personalities to each of these 5 areas, wow. I mean, that really clarifies it all.
Right. Like it really connects into it. So let's go ahead and drill deeper into each of these different aspects. So in the 530 grid, there's 6 levels of proficiency. Level 1 and 2 tend to be getting the car moving. It's easier to change the direction of a moving car than one that's standing still. Level 3 and 4 is making sure we're heading in the right direction. You'll see measurements like box 10, improving pressure points, box 9, why prospects are lost, box 13, applying pressure points, 17, measuring all costs, box 22, tracking all efforts and results, 21. So in levels 3 and 4, it's fine-tuning your engine. You've got your car, it's running. We need to make sure it's running properly. And then levels 5 and 6 are focused in on maximizing your profitability. So how can you be the most profitable? Or if you're a nonprofit or community-based organization, how can you steward all of the resources to impact the highest quantity of people with the highest quality in what we're going through? So when we look at recruiting for each of these, how do we build the best system to leverage the 5 areas the 5 areas in the 6 levels? How do we onboard areas 3 and 4 to have a seamless transition between areas 1, 2, and 3? So if you think of a pipe, where is the leak? 99% of the time, where do you have a leak in a pipe? It's at the seam. You're going to have a leak between area 1 and 2, 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 4 and 5. And so that's where over 90% of your problems in business reside in between a pipe. And then how do we go ahead and perfect areas 4 and 5 to create relationships for life? Let's go ahead and drill deeper into area 1, marketing. So recruiting, how do we box 1 identify the best recruits? And again, this could be for clients, it could be for employees, it could be contractors, vendor, referral partners, donor, volunteer, family, friends, association, groups of people, all of that. How do we use box 2, which is develop and deliver a message, and box 6, grouping people and messages together? How do we use that to gain massive leverage? So now we're not marketing one-on-one. So in area 1, it's different than the other 4 areas. So the other 4 areas primarily are one-on-one relationships. There's exceptions to that, but that's the general rule. Area 1 is where you're gaining massive leverage. This is where your leverage comes in to the hilt. If a business owner, if a leader is having challenges where they're working tons of hours, there's a high statistical probability they don't have their marketing systems, so it's more and better leads. And then how do we use all 6 of the boxes and then all 30 of the boxes in the best way? So I remember, Tom, the first thing, we don't have a slide on this one. First time Tom saw this, it didn't have any of the numbers on it. And so Tom says there were all the arrows between all the different, boxes. Remember that, Tom?
I do.
And Tom said, Mark, you guys got to take out all the boxes or all the arrows. I'm thinking, no, Tom, you can't take out the arrows. Like, no, you have to have the arrows in. I didn't say this to him. I'm like, he's the president of the largest real estate franchise in the world, 140,000 salespeople, in over 70 different countries. Just do what he tells you to do, Mark. It was one of the hardest things that I ever did is taking out all the arrows because everything's interconnected. And if you don't have all the arrows in, Well, then you can't see all the interconnections. Now, it makes a lot of sense, for sure. Nicole, I think you've got to take off here. Any thoughts you have?
I've been looking at the GT system and the 530 grid for, I think it'll be 5 years in February. And it was the first time that it clicked for me in Area 1 marketing that you don't combine box 1 and box 6, you combine box 2 and box 6.
Well, actually, box 6 is actually
really
1 and
excited.
2. So box 1 and 2,
Yeah.
you do it separately, but box 6 is like box 1 and 2 on steroids. It takes it to another, it's where you're multiplying everything out.
Exactly. I think in my mind, I try to black and white it and do, okay, I'm going to do box 1, done. I'm going to do box 2, done. I'm going to do box 6, and I can't do that with box 6.
No.
I can't make it its own little black and white, and I think it finally clicked for me that it's not black and white, and I can't make it black and white.
See, and that's just beautiful, Nicole, and that's where the mastermind, that's where the community kicks in, and that's where your marketing mastermind group that you have on Wednesdays is really starting to focus on box 10, which is a level 4. And the things you guys are doing, I haven't seen companies of worldwide companies do what you're doing, and you're doing it economically, you're doing it, within budgets, you're doing it low cost. It's absolutely insane. Anything else, Nicole, you have?
No, this is good. I'm excited.
You're awesome.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. So let's take a look at, Area 2, pre-sales. So how do we best, work 100% of the leads we generate for any area? You'll notice that there's not any one of the other 30 boxes that have 100%. None of them. Box 3 has to be perfect. It has to be flawless. You have to get somebody who's thinking, we make no mistakes. It's like the military, first responders, like somebody in understanding box 3, it's 100%, it's not 99%. And so, Tom, can you share your story about how you had this instinct that you guys are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month on leads, maybe millions, and you had this sense, everybody was saying, leads weren't good, whatever. You had this sense that something wasn't right. Can you share that story?
Sure. We had a system that would, if somebody went on our website and looked at a listing, they'd send an email that we could track all that stuff. And so I went to our IT guys and said, and you have to understand the company I worked for, it was a big conglomerate, so that had Century and Coldwell Banker and all the rest of them. So I said to the IT guys, how many, in order for a lead to get marked dead, the agent had to mark it dead, their manager had to mark it dead, the broker had to mark it dead, then it came back to us. So when I went to the IT guy, I said, how many dead leads do we get in? He said, I can't break it out that way. It's all of the brands that come together. I said, well, how many are you getting? He goes, 50,000. I said, 50,000? We haven't been doing it for a year. He goes, oh, that's a month. I said, can you break out 5,000 of my leads? And he did. And I had a call center. I wrote some questions and had them call and get the information. And here's the 5,000 leads now in the breakdown. 10% of them roughly were bogus leads, Mickey Mouse kind of stuff. 10% of them had taken themselves out of the market for whatever reason, weren't interested in buying or selling their home now. 40%, and these are leads we had now, 40% of those leads that we marked dead had bought something from somebody. The other 40% of those leads were still in the marketplace looking. So 80% of the leads we marked dead were either bought or still looking in the marketplace, and we had decided, well, our agents had decided, because we didn't have the 530 grid in place, we didn't have the pre-sale in place, that we could incubate those 80% of the leads to some kind of conclusion to buy from us.
See, and this is where the intricacies of this is just cool because it's box 9, improve pressure points, and so that's what you did intuitively. And then box 10 is measuring results. You know, marketing has to go ahead and help the rest of the area measure the results. Otherwise, you're going to have leaks in the pipe, and nobody's going to even realize that's there. So imagine each area, each silo interconnecting with one another and caring about one another. And when we have a leak in a pipe, it's not pointing fingers at one another. It's all taking ownership to say, where is this leak, occurring from? How do we fully integrate the 4 areas to best leverage the Area 2 pre-sales? And then how do we use Area 2 pre-sales to help people make dimensional jumps? Again, this is why we say you got to be part of a community. And there's multiple communities that you can be part of. You can start your own community. There's a whole bunch of different ways. But these communities, this is where you drill in to the real practical things. Like what this course does is helps to connect dots that we've never connected before. But we have to have community to be able to follow through on it. Let's take a look at Area 3, the sale. So how do we best ask questions to tell the best stories? So when I became a grandfather, I asked, a bunch of grandfathers that I knew, how do you be an amazing grandfather? Tom said to me, he said, pay attention to your daughter and your son-in-law. Watch them, not the grandkids. Unbelievable advice. I had an uncle who said, Mark, tell your grandkids stories, because that's what connects the one generation from the next. So when we're asking questions to position it to tell stories, because the best salespeople in the world, they're storytellers. How do we get new salespeople up to speed faster? We give them the stories of previous salespeople or previous situations. How do we get pre-sales? To get a warmer sale to the sale is telling stories. The stories we really need to have in pre-sales, because they're amiable and analytic, is we need a lot of stories in pre-sales about procrastination, the silent killer. I remember 4 or 5 years ago, Tom went ahead and said on Thanksgiving, we were talking. We do that. It's pretty cool as part of the community. And so there's less people on Thanksgiving talking, and I asked Tom, and I said, Tom, what's your biggest challenge? What would you love help on? And he said, I need to have more patience, Mark. And I said, well, actually, Tom, you don't need more patience. He's like, no, I'm pretty sure I do. I'm like, no, you don't. We argued back and forth like we frequently do. And he said, okay, Mark, what do you mean? I said, you need to teach other people around you to have less patience, because if they had less patience, you wouldn't need to have patience. So patience is the killer in sales. When you have amiable and analytic personalities doing pre-sales, they tend to be wired to be patient. This is going to elongate the sales process. So give the amiable, give the analytic a lot of stories about people who are patient, and it costs them a lot of money. So you've got to build in to the questions how to tell stories. How do we learn from the losses? Box 13. Like some of the stuff that you can go in, when you see the 530, you see somebody who knows how to use the side 530 grid. It's like a masterpiece. It's like a symphony on how they bring it together. And then how do we continue to resell everyone we are focused on? Penetration, speed to sell, how do you reduce that? 5-time management, freedom fighters, how do you get your salespeople focused in on the most highly dollar productive leads? Penetration versus expansion strategies, how do we get more business from our current clients that we have? Let's take a look at Area 4, servicing. So how do we over-deliver from what individuals have heard we would do? So how do we get servicing of the mindset? Listen, sales had to deliver a lot say we were going to do a lot because it's competitive out there. So we've got to find out what sales is telling them we're going to do, and then we've got to do even more. How do we take our successes, box 12, and magic seed them to success for all? It's literally like Miracle Grow. Another great course from Life Masteries is the magic seed system. It's taking box 12 And it absolutely just, it's crazy what happens. And then how do we ensure that all 6 boxes levels are being leveraged properly? Again, you only get this kind of depth in a community when you're participating. Let's take a look at Area 5, Client Relationships for Life. So in recruiting, how do we leverage the networks of those we have relationships with? How do we build a flawless execution system to onboard in the best way? To onboard customers, onboard employees, onboard contractors, vendors, referral partners, donors, volunteers, family, friends, associations, any group of people. How do we do that? And then how do we best internalize and leverage all 5 areas and all the 30 boxes? So we do that through BOSS. It's the combination. It's blending the DNA for people, the DNA for business, and the DNA for life. And we've gone through the overview of the DNA for people. We've gone through that. But you can dig in. Life Masteries has got so many courses. They have 7-week courses on each box. Not all the boxes, but many of the boxes, the ones getting started. We've gone through this lesson now, so we understand, okay, these are not separate. These have to be integrated together. If you just do DNA for people, that's not going to work. If you do just DNA for business, that's not going to work. Next lesson that we're going through, DNA for life, that's the hardest one of all of them to teach because there's over 500 natural laws, and Life Masteries and Legacy Partners have spent decades trying to figure out how to do it in order, and they finally have discovered it. It's called EC2, Engineered Clarity Community. So that's going to be a great lesson that we're going to go through next. Again, it's the engine that runs our business. So we've gone through Lesson 1, Lesson 2, and Lesson 3. Next, we're going to be going through Lesson 4, which is Natural Laws Leveraging Everything. So it's bringing the people with the business into life, into what governs every culture, what governs every aspect. Like one of the 500 natural laws is the cluster principle. It states it's not unusual somebody making a buying or selling decision on average will know between 3 and 9 other people making that same type of buying decision. Like if that's true, like every client could refer between 3 and 9 people, how come our businesses aren't doubling every year? It's because we don't have the right boss designed and engineered. So this connects into all of the different pieces, like everything's interconnected together. Tom, we want, and Paul, we want to go into kind of the Q&A session here. So I'm kind of ripping through this. We'll swing back to it. Any thoughts or questions you guys have?
No, I'm good.
You'll be happy. I had my goosebump moment. And so here's the question. So the goosebump moment occurred when you were talking about the different areas. Pre-sale procrastination kills you. Sales patience kills you. Is there a third P? Because there's a video, if I can get a third P. And would positive motivation work as the third P?
Yes. It's perfect.
Then I have the video.
Awesome. You rock. Okay.
And I just need to figure out how to post them because I have 3 you haven't even seen yet. They're
done.
I don't.
Awesome. Well, Life Masteries and EC2 can help you do that for sure. So we're going to go into the next one is going to be the DNA for life. So one properly designed system, properly and engineered designed boss system has the ability to cover every area, any group of people we desire to impact. Now, what we're going to also be in the future lessons, we're going to be talking about the expansion of the 530 grid to look at the leadership side and the profitable partnership side as well. And this just, like, after 3 years of going through this, Tom and I and a bunch of other people said, hey, what about leadership and what about profitable partnerships and being able to go through? So who do you want to partner with? Do you want to partner with CPAs, real estate, mortgage, technology? I mean, when you have a boss, when you have a 530 grid, that system is designed to not only help your business to grow, but anyone you partner with. You become like a magnet in being able to attract other people to you. So we've gone in, so hopefully we're internalizing, awakening, asking questions, listening to our why, being able to see new insights, being able to have purification of intentions, thinking radically different, having capabilities that give us additional leverage, that creates internalization, that changes, that does where we take action and then we fail. And then we go back, get it, and we start the whole process all over again in awakening, taking ownership, work, and then caring for people. So again, first thing you need to do is connect with your art mentor. Then you need to connect with and bring value to your 2 art buddies, and then turn learning into earning, following through, and that's through community. So hopefully you've taken advantage of that. Hopefully you've done that. Hopefully you're moving through that. Really, really important. We'll go into the Q&A. Here we go.